from 10 to 18. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your beer.
Follow the leader.
The leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. And by the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's the TavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, why is it that when prosperity smiles on black folk, there's always a level of white resentment? That's the thesis of a provocative piece Yale professor Elijah Anderson has just penned for The Atlantic. He'll join us to unpack this resentment and how it can make life exhausting for people of color and lead to the undoing of policies that have nurtured black advancement. We'll do that with Elijah Anderson in hour two. In our third hour, two conversations. Up first,
Nick, where do I get one of these alarms?
You want one of these alarms, Rocky? You're gonna have to get out there and take it yourself.
I'll do it.
Hello? Oh, my.
it's the king of sound effects, the voice-strumentalist. The voice-strumentalist, love that word. Actor Michael Winslow joins us at the top of hour three. And speaking of the black voice, you want to hear this. You don't want to miss this one. On the B side of hour three, if you feel Alexa or Siri doesn't always understand you, mother, you listening? If you feel that Alexa or Siri doesn't always understand you, there may be a fix for that. Howard University professor Gloria Washington joins us on the backside of hour three to explain her new project that will make it easier for black folk to be understood by automatic speech recognition technology. Again, don't miss the backside of hour three and how you can help Alexa or Siri better understand you in your black dialect when you're trying to give them instructions. But we commence today's show talking politics, no laughing matter, with the Democratic political advisor and executive director of the nonprofit More Perfect Union, Faz Shakir. Faz, how are you today?
Good, Tavis. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Ooh, you sound hollow. You sound hollow. Miles is going to fix that. But I'm good to have you. I'm glad to have you on the program. Yeah, an hour of that I can't take, and neither can the audience. But we'll get that audio sounding just right here in a second. But I'm glad to have you on. And I have to start with the obvious. No surprise here. It is the biggest story in the world, literally. President Biden has announced. I suggested yesterday. I thought this was coming, and indeed, the White House has announced that the president is going to visit Israel. As this Gaza humanitarian crisis worsens. Hamas has and is releasing video of hostages. Israel continues to bomb unrelentingly in Gaza. And the ground offensive in Israel has been at least delayed momentarily after the visit of Joe Biden. If there's any evidence you can give, one could offer, I should say, to suggest that the U.S. and Israel are certainly talking beyond the fact that we're shipping weapons and et cetera to help them. If there's any evidence beyond the fact that they're talking and that the U.S. is, perhaps getting through on some level, it is that this ground offensive has been delayed until after the visit of the president. And so Biden headed to Israel. The ground offensive certainly will not begin while he's there. And so when he leaves the country, I assume all hell will break loose then. But until he leaves, at least the ground offensive isn't going to commence. But as you can imagine, this trip to Israel announced by the president is a bitter pill for many to swallow. There are certainly some objectives to the president going to visit Israel. One of those objectives is to show once again that we stand with Israel. The other is to remind these other Arab states, you don't want none of this. You don't want to get involved in this. The U.S. is an ally of Israel. You do not want to get into this, and that's significant in part because we see Iran starting to make some comments and trying to figure out what their options are in this process. But it's clearly attempted not just to show our support of Israel, but to suggest to these Arab states you don't want to get involved in this. And there's some other objectives we'll talk about as we move through this hour. But President Biden on his way to Israel, the ground offensive there, that is to say Israel will not move into Gaza on the ground until after he leaves. But it's going to rain terror. There's going to be a rain of terror when the president actually leaves Israel. And you can imagine for those Palestinians and for those who are sympathetic to the Palestinian cause and for those who have questions about the role that Israel is now playing, a visit from the U.S. president does not make this conversation any easier to have. But we're going to have it anyway, and we'll commence when we come forward with our guest, Faz Shakir. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac perfection like zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Feel it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bustin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range on a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with the CHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
1 in 4 Americans today are living with a disability. I'm one of them. People with disabilities are extremely talented, resilient problem solvers that have so much to offer. And we've got a trusted ally on our side, an organization we can rely on, Easter Seals. Easter Seals is leading the way to full equity, inclusion, and access to healthcare, employment, and education for people with disabilities, families, and communities. That's my Easter Seals. Make it yours.
Learn more and get involved at easterseals.com.
If you're a veteran with a service-connected disability that is directly impacting your ability to work, resources are available to help you find employment. VA's Veteran Readiness and Employment, or VR&E, can assist you with finding a job that uses your existing skills. Or, if you're interested in exploring a new field, a VR&E counselor can help you determine the right education or training options for a new career. Find out if VR&E is right for you by visiting va.gov/VRE today.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, could potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
Let's hope it sounds different. That is Fast Secure's phone line. Fast, good to have you on the program. Let me start, as I said a moment ago, with the obvious. President Biden is visiting Israel as this Gaza humanitarian crisis worsens and the world watches. This is a bit of a high wire act. As I mentioned moments ago, there are reasons why the president has decided to make this trip because he knows that it's a high-stakes visit. And yet he's going anyway. So let's just start with your read of the latest developments regarding the Israeli-Hamas war, and we'll jump from there for the hour. Lots to talk about, though.
Well, Tavis, when you suffer your own version of a 9/11, which Israel certainly did, and you get hit with one of the worst days in its country's history, and thousands of plus people die from a terrorist attack, they're going to rightly be in search of allyship and sympathy and understanding of we've got to be able to respond to this. We've got to have a nation that can be secure and safe in its own borders. We've got to provide security and safety for Israel, and that relationship with the United States means even more at this point. You count on your friends in the toughest moments, not in the easiest moments, right? And this is one of the toughest moments for Israel. And then as you deal with that as your United States and you say you're President Biden, you're trying to help the strong ally who's always been there with us, what do you say about Gazans? And that's where I think you've seen the last 48 hours. If you're watching Secretary of State Tony Blinken run from one country to the next, he's been in like Jordan and Bahrain and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and he's all over the place. And right now he's in Israel for 7.5 hours last night talking about how do we get aid into these Gazans? How do we get humanitarian aid so that innocent people aren't suffering? And that was the hang-up. That was the issue of why the president didn't want to go until they could secure that we could come with a commitment that there be humanitarian aid flowing into the Gaza Strip, which we're led to believe that this presidential trip will hopefully unlock.
What's fascinating about that for me, and I'm not naive, sometimes you have to do 2 or 3 things at one time. I understand that, and that's why I called it a high wire act. On the one hand, we see this memo that leaked out of the State Department, and the Washington Post ran a story about it, I'm sure you saw, that high-ranking Biden officials have been told not to use terminology, phraseology like ceasefire. Stop using phrases like we want to see the bloodshed stop. There's certain things, but ceasefire at the epicenter of that's not the language that they want to use right now. That is not staying on message, as we say in politics. And so this message, the leaking of this memo, rather, and the messaging in it is quite telling. They don't want to use phrases like stop the bloodshed. You don't want to use the word ceasefire. We had a guest on this program yesterday, Phyllis Bennis, who said the exact opposite, and I agree with her, that what we need right now is, in fact, a ceasefire. I'm not naive. Bibi Netanyahu has made it very clear he wants to crush and destroy. Those are his words. To crush and destroy Hamas, the innocent victims notwithstanding, but that's his end and aim. So when this Biden visit ends, as I said a moment ago, they're going to rain down terror on Gaza City. There's no question about that. But how do you read this leaked memo suggesting that they shouldn't use the phrase ceasefire? That's not the message they want to send right now. How do you juxtapose that with them working overtime to get humanitarian aid inside of Gaza? It's a tricky policy to sort of advance, if that makes sense.
Oh, I'm with you. It's tricky. But so a couple of thoughts in reaction to that, Tavis. Mm-hmm. One is, if after 9/11, right, some nation, our friend and ally, came to us and said, hey, engage in a ceasefire, United States of America. Don't do anything against the Taliban or anybody. We would have said, to hell with you. We're going to figure out how to respond appropriately. So that's one point. But second, you raised Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I think that's the fundamental problem here. I think you got a Prime Minister of Israel who we frankly don't trust, who has the right motivations and instincts to do what's right for his people. So if he were saying I was going to go after Hamas, and we believed and understood that he was going to try to target and respond accordingly to hold those responsible who engaged in terror, we'd feel one way about it, Tavis, I think. But if we think that actually this unleashes for him a desire to just go all in and hurt a bunch of civilians in Palestine who, quite frankly, he hasn't really ever shown much compassion for. I mean, if you look back at Prime Minister Netanyahu in 2019, he was advocating for those who care about the state of Israel. We should support and fund Hamas. Why would a Prime Minister of Israel say that? Think about that. Reflect on that. Why would a Prime Minister of Israel say, for those who care about the state of Israel, we should fund and support Hamas? And the reason that he has felt that, why Netanyahu has felt that, is because he wants a division within the Palestinians. He wants, a militant side, because he feels like we can have more strength and we can be able to go on the offensive against Palestinians if they don't have a government who has more legitimacy and credibility with the world. And so for his own advantage point, he's loved having Hamas in power. And you see that this is his opportunity to say, both form a war cabinet, gain allyship, and say, now I can do what I've always wanted to do, is go into Gaza, seize it, occupy it, tear down buildings. And instead of an alternative ideology, if you had a different Prime Minister of Israel who'd say, our safety and security of Israel, and I say this as somebody who believes this myself, if I'm the Prime Minister of Israel, I want a safe and stable and strong Israel, and I know it is contingent on having safe, strong, and stable neighbors. And they need to be doing well as well. And we will not be ever safe if all of our neighbors are living in destitution, poverty, if they are crime-stricken, if they cannot form governments. That hurts us. And I don't think that mentality has ever been shared by Netanyahu. And as a result, you have a Prime Minister of Israel who is wanting the neighbors to actually suffer, not to feel like you're building them up to try to be stable and secure in their own right.
Wow, there's a lot in that. Let me just take a few minutes to unpack it with you. First of all, this audience has heard me say before, and I welcome your comments just now. But again, I have not said this ill-advised, and I believe it to the core of my being. Bibi Netanyahu is the wrong person. There have been moments in this process, and this process goes back years and years and years and decades. We know that. This process meaning, by that I mean, of course, the drama between Israel and Palestine. This is not a new story. It's an old story. And yet, over the course of that period, there have been wrong leaders, I think, on both sides of the table. Clearly, Hamas is not the right person. They're not a person. They're a group. They're an entity, but they are the elected political leadership at the moment. And they're the wrong people. But so is Bibi Netanyahu. This is the wrong person, I think. That's my own view. And your comments just now underscore that. And I was just thinking, while you were talking, of the right word to describe that strategy, or as George Bush would say, strategery. Trying to think of the right word to describe that strategery, as you just laid it out, that comes from the mind of Bibi Netanyahu. And the word I wrote down while you were talking is sinister. That's a sinister sort of public policy. That's my read of it, Faz. How do you read it?
Yeah, it's a place of insecurity, and it says that, like, think about it in your own family relationships. If you see all your relationships as zero sum, that I can only be better if my brother is down, I can only be better if my sister is down, then what is that making you? You don't have confidence and security and safety in yourself. Instead you have to feel like you have to put people down. I think now, of course, what does that breed? And as you talked about, from the creation of Israel in 1948 onward, it has been an intractable and painful journey for this long period of time. And while there have been some lights of hope, mostly we have seen people flocking to, sinister is a good way, negative, like pessimistic push down mentalities on both sides, right? That's what terrorism is too. It's a reaction and saying, I don't care about your safety and security, Israel, and we're going to make you feel unsafe and secure. So you have a downward cycle of violence that has continually perpetuated because both sides are not caring or wanting the stable and safe existence of the other. And that's where I think it has always needed and wanted and hoped for a United States and an international community who cares and has the values to engage and say, hey, we're going to be grown-ups at this table and help you get to the solutions that is best for your own lives.
Yeah.
And we, that's where I hope President Biden will that's hopefully the role that he will play. He's no novice at this. He's been around the block.
Mm-hmm.
He's done this a few times. But I don't think it helps if you don't keep in mind that what needs to come out of this chaos is a stable and secure Palestine where people can live in peace and stability. That will help Israel fundamentally. I've always believed it.
The other part of what makes this sinister for me is that that strategy means that from time to time you're sacrificing the lives of your own people. I mean, there's a particular end and aim you're trying to achieve, but in the process, with that kind of strategy, to support Hamas, to divide the Palestinian people, Hamas responds in the way that they just did. What that means is over time, you're going to be sacrificing the lives of your own people.
Yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, at some point, if you're saying that in 2019, when you look at Netanyahu's comments of wanting Hamas in power in Palestine, to say that is a good outcome for Israel, rather than to say, hey, we want a different government. Let's work with let's say, a Palestinian Authority. Let's build them up. Let's have stable and good negotiations with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with others to try to get to a resolution so that this isn't a sore spot and a cancer and a wound onto humanity that it continues to exist forever. Instead of having that courage, peace requires the most courage, as we know. It's easiest to just engage in conflict and war. That's an easy human reaction. But he has moved in that direction because it's always been to his political benefit. It helps him generate, funding and defense measures and all of the needs that Israel needs. When they're in a war posture, they certainly do get more support during these periods of times, rightly so, because they're better, they've been a better democratic ally in that region, certainly for the United States, than most others there. And for that reason, they've always been able to count on the United States as a strong supporter in these moments. But it's not, to your point, you don't want conflict. You shouldn't want conflict. This isn't where you want to live. Mm-hmm. But when you do, you have reason to doubt the motivations of somebody who feels like, is seeking conflict.
Yep. There's a lot more news to get to, including the election today, or the attempt at electing a Speaker of the House. Speaking of drama, we'll talk about that in a moment here, but a few more things on this Israel-Hamas situation before I move to some other issues I want to cover with our guest, Faz Shakir, in this hour, who is the executive director of the nonprofit More Perfect Union. The other thing I want to come to right quick that you raised moments ago that made me think about the following. And that is this notion, and I'm hearing this more and more every day, Faz. The U.S. has said, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, that the solution here is in the Middle East is a two-state solution. The answer here is a two-state solution. And yet, the more you hear that, and the more you see the way the U.S. sides with Israel in the way that we do, and I'm not even debating whether one thinks that's the right thing to do or not. I'm trying to frame two different statements. One is that we need a two-state solution here, which every president since I've been alive has said, essentially. On the other hand, you see the way the U.S. has this really, really cozy relationship with Israel. And the more people try to juxtapose those two things, the more difficult it becomes. I raise that given that the president, in the middle of all this, is now headed to Israel. So how do you square two-state solution commentary, public statement, with we support and we stand with Israel? Those two things are harder and harder for people to square fast.
Yeah, and the hard part here, Tavis, is if you literally backtrack from, let's say 2 weeks ago, and you went back in time, Joe Biden was engaged in this, quite frankly, historic effort to have Saudi Arabia, for the first time ever, recognize the state of Israel and have normalized relations. They were literally on the path towards normalized relations. And that was what the Biden administration had been working on, because they were trying to get to a two-state solution where Saudi Arabia being a key factor in this region, an ally, would have been fundamental to saying, hey, now we can get to a place of peace and prosperity if Egypt and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and all of the key allies understand that we're invested in the state of Israel to be safe and secure and needs to exist here. Now we can get to a place of no more expansions of occupations, right? Let's get to a state establishment of a two-state solution. That was the path. And I do think that Hamas, quite frankly, one of their motivations in the terrorism attacks was to know and see and understand that some of that was going on. And that, frankly, from their perspective, if you're a radical militant terrorist group and you're seeing, hey, there seems to be increasing peace conversations, right? There seems to be more willingness to engage in dialogue between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That is a threat to you. That's a concern to your own existence. And they do what terrorist groups do. They engage in a heinous, awful act to basically throw it all off course. And so I urge any of your listeners, you can just Google, the last 2 weeks, they were engaged literally in the final stages where Saudi Arabia was literally talking about engaging and talking about normalized relations with Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince is saying that. It would have been historic. It's a major movement. Biden was talking about going into the election, talking about he could have brought a version of a Middle East peace, together, and it's all disrupted, of course, by Hamas. So I would bring that into context too, that to understand the motivations that were at play here.
Speaking of context, watching my time, we got 2 minutes, and we can continue when we come forward. Speaking of context, though, I quoted Jesse Jackson the other day yesterday, by saying that content without context is pretext. That's Jesse. Content without context is pretext. He's right about that. I'll go back to your point about how we would respond if somebody said the day after the Taliban hit us, a ceasefire. Don't respond, don't retaliate. I took your point when you said it, and yet there isn't the kind of history between the U.S. and the Taliban as there is in the Middle East. And there are a lot of people, again, becoming increasingly disturbed by the fact that we look at these moments in real time, but you can't look at the content of today without putting in the broader context of yesterday.
Yeah. Well, and that's the hard part has always been about the Middle East is that each side has enough substantiable, justifiable, righteous anger at the other for attacks that were heinous and terrible that you could spend. This is what's always been the challenge of the Middle East. People's history is long. They can remember. You can go back and people will tell you, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, 5 decades ago, my grandparents, this is what happened to them. And actually, the challenge of peace has always been, to some degree, to get to a better future, you're going to have to move on from the past. And I say that as somebody who loves history, who's a student of history, who cares about the context, everything that you said, Tavis. The courage of peace at that point is to say, let the past be the past. Let's chart a different and better new future. Yeah. And too many people have been hanging on to that for such long that it's, now the status quo, to your point, has been so difficult for Palestinians that the encroachments on the West Bank make it very hard for that to become a place that you could establish a state in. Gaza, with the state now that it is in, who knows whether it's even a two-state solution is possible. I'm not even sure it is, right? And I don't know what other ways in which this could become a democratically formed government that could still keep Israelis safe and secure and have a homeland for them if it were a one-state solution. Now I don't know where we're at with solutions. It's got to be a two-state solution, and I don't know where the path is forward.
What I do know is that the president has warned Bibi Netanyahu about reoccupying Gaza. And I don't know how that's going to work out because, again, if your mission is to crush and destroy, I can't imagine, given how he's moved in the past, that they would not then start to reoccupy Gaza. President Biden, to his credit, has at least warned them against doing that. We will see how that plays out in the coming days, but I digress on that for now. When we come forward, a great deal more politics to get to, a lot of trending stuff. That's overseas. Now we got to come home and talk about this drama today with regard to trying to elect the Speaker of the House. This is a nightmare, and it's a nightmare and circus all at the same time. We'll talk about it when we come forward. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump is back in a New York courtroom for his civil fraud trial today. Before entering the courtroom, Trump again blasted New York Attorney General Letitia James, calling her a radical lunatic, and decried the trial as being rigged. He also argued the trial should have a jury, saying he's never heard of a trial not having one before. With migrants continuing to pour into New York City, Mayor Eric Adams' administration is furthering and limiting their time in shelters. The African-American mayor, under a new policy, says migrant families now have 60 days and then have to find alternative housing. It comes shortly after the mayor put a shelter time limit for adult migrants without children at 30 days. The mayor says an average of 600 migrants have arrived daily in the last week. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Seeing a slow drive as you travel in Sylmar. This is a problem affecting the 5 south side of the 5. Right as you get towards that 210, we have a crash in center traffic lanes coming away from the 14 freeway. We are seeing the busy drive. Lakeview Terrace, if you're taking that 210 eastbound, just past Osborne Street. Still seeing a collision here in the right lane and the busy drive from at least the 118. Roland Heights, you're 60 east as you get towards Nogales. A wreck in the left lane and a center lane, and we're busy from around 7. Baldwin Park, the 605 north approaching the 10. Second lane from the left block to the crash, coming away from the 60, the busy drive. And the 605 north at Beverly, second lane from the left block here with a busy commute from at least the 105 freeway.
If you like using debit over credit, shouldn't you also get rewarded? Well, now you can with Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases with no fees, period. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
Seems like COVID's everywhere again, but there's good news from Pfizer. This season's updated COVID-19 shots are now available for ages 6 months and up, and they're designed to better protect against recent variants. Ask your pharmacist or doctor and schedule at vaccines.gov. Sponsored by Pfizer.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
I'm a bad man. The Chargers lose by 3 to the Dallas Cowboys last night. Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert threw an interception with 1:20 left in the fourth quarter to seal the victory for an inspired Cowboys team. A week ago, the Cowboys gave up 42 points at San Francisco. They allowed only 17 last night. Rams starting cornerback Darian Kendrick was arrested early Monday morning in Hollywood for illegal possession of a gun in his car. The gun was found when Kendrick was pulled over for a traffic violation. Kendrick was arrested on a similar charge in 2021 in his hometown of Rock Hill, South Carolina. Rock Hill police found Kendrick sleeping in his car with a gun on his lap. Top 5 college football teams in this week's AP poll: Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, and Washington. USC dropped from 10th to 18th. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talent, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer.
Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Faz Shakir, who is the executive director of the nonprofit More Perfect Union. We'll talk about the work he's doing there as we move through this hour. But we're talking politics, and God knows there's a lot to talk about. In case you've just tuned in, we spent some time, and I really appreciated Faz's insights on the Israeli-Hamas drama. President Biden once again on his way to Israel, in case you've not heard that story. And that in some ways complicates things even more than they already are. But I digress on that for now. Here at home, though, speaking of drama, I called it, Faz, a moment ago, a circus. It's really more like a haunted house because as we approach Halloween, there's nothing more scarier than the thought of Jim Jordan as Speaker of the House. Now, I said days ago when Steve Scalise was on the verge of being elected, we thought, out of Louisiana, here's a guy who has bragged about being David Duke without the baggage. Those are the words of Steve Scalise, that he was David Duke without the baggage. That could have been the person third in line to the presidency. Well, that didn't happen. Scalise goes down, but now Jim Jordan pops up, and here's a guy who's a insurrectionist sympathizer who thinks nothing really went wrong on that particular day at the Capitol. So you got an insurrectionist sympathizer now who could be the next Speaker of the House. Either way, we're in the wrong frame. No question about that. I said moments ago that Bibi Netanyahu, to my mind, is the wrong person at this moment to be leading Israel. That's my assessment of it. I'm not the only one. There are Israelis who feel the same way. But he's the wrong person. And if Bibi's the wrong person, God knows that Jim Jordan's the wrong person. That's my assessment. Now I pass the mic to you. What's your read of this haunted house that we are having to watch every day? It's getting scarier and scarier, it seems to me.
Well, and agreeing with everything that you said, Tavis, I'll add that he's exactly what the Republicans deserve. So, you want to be a party that doesn't give a damn about democracy, doesn't care about institutions, wants to, make it harder for any of us to do hard things through government. If that's your mentality, that's your philosophy, you don't care about the institutions, you want to wreck it, then you got your guy. That's your person. He's a nihilist, right? By his nature, as you said, didn't believe in the democratic outcome of the last election. So now you put him in charge, and I think, and sadly, at some point we have to get rid of this cancer. And they on the right, especially, they're going to have to cleanse themselves of this cancer. And the only way to do it is to go right through it and go for it. Here you go. This best represents you guys. This is your values. This is your corruption racket. If you look at the money that Jordan makes, he's basically bought and sold for by large corporate lobbyists all over this town. This is what he does. It's like it's going to be rough. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to be revealing, Tavis. And so, there we go. Let's have it out. Let's show everybody your true colors, and I think it'll at least make for sadly another election contest in which you get pretty black or white here. You want to choose which side you're on.
Let's wrestle for a moment with what you just said a moment ago, Faz, and that is that this is something, a cancer, as you put it, they have to cleanse themselves of. I think you're right about that, but I don't see where, when, or how that happens. Do you?
Not quickly. Obviously, with Donald Trump still running strong in the Republican ranks, I think that the challenge we're having here, Tavis, is like at some, let's assume we're at a 50-50 stalemate, and part of the country is certainly that way. But when we get to these margins of just changing the country slowly but surely to 52-48, 53-47, those types of things will have large ramifications. And I do think that with Trump, with Jordan, the act is getting pretty damn old. And I understand for some people the nihilism, the lack of belief in any of this government worth investing in, that it's all rotten, it's all garbage, and like that's the attitude. That's what Trump and Jordan have been selling. If you look at the gag order and what Trump is doing right now, just engage in warfare against a judge, blast the whole criminal justice process, and it has some appeal out there. We got to be honest about it because he's a cult of personality. Certainly, there's some appeal around disrupt the whole damn thing because people don't believe the government can actually work for you, and that's what I'm really fully invested in. The only way you get rid of the cancer you show is by steadily but surely, I'm going to show you little by little something can work and improve in your life, and I'm invested in it. I think when you have a test of the American public where they're at on tap, we'll find out. But I got to believe a majority of the American public is still on the side of like, no, these democratic institutions, the democratic way of life is worth saving.
Yeah, as we know, as this audience knows, Republicans control the House by a narrow 221 to 212 margin, all those twos and ones. 221 for Republicans, 212 for Democrats. It's a narrow margin, so he needs 217 to be elected Speaker. And that is not a foregone conclusion. Steve Scalise was also recommended and supported by the caucus, but couldn't make it happen on the House floor. Jim Jordan, supported by the caucus. No evidence at the moment. Again, this is a dynamic conversation, so anything could happen at any moment. But no evidence right now that he has exactly what he needs to pull this off on the floor, never mind his support, once again, by the caucus. As you recall, there were 15 votes. It took Kevin McCarthy 15 rounds to finally get across the line, and then we know what happened afterwards. I'm not sure if it's going to take Jordan 15, but I don't think it's going to happen on the first ballot. So we will see how long it takes him to be elected Speaker. Either way, when it's all said and done, here's the guy who has absolutely no interest whatsoever. He's to the right even of Kevin McCarthy. He has no interest whatsoever in working with Democrats. What happens to government when you have elected someone who doesn't respect the outcome of the last election, who's an insurrectionist sympathizer, and has no interest whatsoever in working with Democrats when those numbers are as close as they are? What happens?
Well, you got a stalemate.
The pregnant pause. The pregnant pause. Well, yeah.
It's not going to be great for us. Let's be honest. It ain't great for anybody. But I do think in the longer project of peeling people out of their corners and saying, can we find some common ground of where we actually can work together? I don't think he's going to. That's not a sale you want to take to the American public here, Republicans. But the only reason he is where he is Donald Trump endorsement, we know, right? So he initially had lost in the first round, as you mentioned, to Steve Scalise. And then Scalise couldn't get the votes, pulled himself out. And then Jim Jordan rises from the ashes because he's got Donald Trump at his back. And I think most of the people who are going to try to want to oppose him and the Republican side are going to have to think twice because they know they're also going up against the big guy.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are scared of him. So I think at some point we're all just reckoning with the big, the big elephant in the room, which was fundamentally Trumpism that still governs all this.
Yeah, I think for Hakeem Jeffries, he's playing the long game, not the short game. The short game is that Jim Jordan may, in fact, be elected Speaker. And if that does happen, I think Democrats believe, Hakeem Jeffries being their leader, they believe that's a good thing. Because to your point, it shows the nation what happens when you elect a guy like Jordan who has no interest in working with Democrats and nothing gets done. I was just reading an article yesterday, you probably saw the same thing I saw, that based on the new maps, based on gerrymandering, let's just call it what it is, gerrymandering, based on these new maps, Democrats are going to pick up seats in this next election. It looks, this gerrymandered new map looks really good for Democrats. They're going to pick up a minimum of 6 seats, and that makes that margin much closer. And if Jim Jordan goes completely nuclear, which is his style, he likes to implode things, as you said earlier. The long view is that this Jim Jordan election is great for Democrats come next year. There's a very, very, very good chance they're going to pick up more seats in more competitive districts, and Hakeem Jeffries could, in fact, be the first ever African-American Speaker of the House. So I think this is not about the short game. It's about the long game, and we will see what happens in the coming months. A great deal more to talk about with our guest, Faz Shakir, who you're listening to right now on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Maisha Cairo here for KBLA Talk 1580. We're live in Los Angeles at JP Morgan Chase's Advancing Black Wealth Tour. And I'm speaking to some of the attendees today to see why it was so important for them to be here.
Yeah, this is Lathan and Tyler. Main reason that's very important for me to be here is just to leave a legacy for my kids. Black wealth, generational wealth is what we need in our community, you know. Oh, Chase, someone has to take the lead. They're showing, big business like Chase cares, and they're putting their money where their mouth is at. So it's good to see, big institution like Chase, giving a lifting hand, to the community, and you got to respect that. It makes me want to bank with Chase, and give them another look. If I go to another institution, I actually see what Chase is doing for the community.
That's right, Chase is doing their part to help advance Black wealth. For more money support, tune in every day from 12 to 2 to KBLA Talk 1580's Midday Money Chain, right here.
You can do it all by yourself, baby girl. What's your name? Let me talk to you. Let me buy you a drink.
Spilled your drink? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less than the leading ordinary brand. So you can get back to your night. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed, with our guest Faz Shakir, who is a Democratic political advisor, currently executive director of the nonprofit media organization More Perfect Union, previously senior advisor on Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign, and an aide to congressional leaders, including Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid. He's a bad man and has worked with some bad people, and so I'm honored to be in dialogue with Faz Shakir. Faz, let me. Speaking of Bernie Sanders, let me talk some politics beyond the election of the next House Speaker. By the way, as we speak right now, all these House speeches are underway on the nomination of Jim Jordan, and we will see how many votes it takes. To the extent he does get across the finish line, we'll see whether or not he takes 15 the way Kevin McCarthy did, more or less. That to be decided as this day moves forward. That said, very quickly, what did you make of Bernie Sanders endorsing Joe Biden? He's a progressive, and there are a lot of progressives. You're listening to a guy right now who does what I call unapologetically progressive radio every day. I love Bernie Sanders, and yet there are a whole lot of folk disappointed that Bernie didn't just endorse Biden, but did it pretty early on in the process. As a guy who worked with Bernie Sanders, how did you read that?
Well, Biden has been moving in our direction on so many things, whether it be student debt cancellation, whether you talk about some of the climate civilian corps. He's created these jobs in climate for young people. He's trying to help now take on corporate America through these junk fees. He raised corporate taxes through the Inflation Reduction Act. He instituted a tax on stock buybacks. There are a lot of things that have oriented our economy towards working class people. You have the first president who goes to the picket line. And so it's not to say that like everything about him is amazing and it's all over. It is to say that we accept and appreciate movement in our direction. This is the path that we want to go, and that we want to be an allyship in helping you move in this way. Because the alternative is, I mean, we could obviously sit it out and criticize him, but we have had a good working relationship with the White House, in which I think, it's not as if they agree with everything that we do, but they hear us. You don't get to Medicare price negotiation and those kinds of things without a progressive movement in the tent who's pushing them. And so that's a trade-off. These are tough calls, and I appreciate and respect all of my progressive allies who want to stay outside the tent and say, hey, listen, we're going to push and push you to go bolder and bigger and better. And that's a role for everyone in the ecosystem. But for Bernie himself, I think it was like, listen, I got somebody as an ally with power right now who I think can work with me to do some of the things I've long wanted to do.
And even as Bernie Sanders endorses Joe Biden, and for that matter, AOC endorses Joe Biden, the president and his allies are doing everything they can to crush, and I do mean crush. I mentioned earlier Bibi Netanyahu, who wanted to crush and destroy Hamas. That's exactly what Biden and his allies are doing to third-party candidates. They want to crush and destroy Cornel West and Robert Kennedy Jr. and Marianne Williamson. Anybody who's running as a third-party candidate, even thinking about it. We don't know who the no-labels candidate will be as yet, but they are determined to crush and destroy these third-party candidates. I've written an op-ed piece about that that's coming out soon that you'll be seeing and reading and hearing about. I'll top line what I said in my op-ed piece when we come back and see if Faz Shakir agrees or disagrees with my take. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
At Susan G. Komen, we believe that ending breast cancer needs all of us working together. Because if you've just been diagnosed and don't know where to turn, we've got you. If you can't afford the treatment you need, we've got you. And if you are driven to honor the loved one you've just lost, we have a place for you here. Because of you, we're supporting those who need help today while tirelessly searching for tomorrow's cures. Visit Komen.org and be a part of our Susan G. Komen community today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for voting rights. When We All Vote is a leading national nonpartisan initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase participation in each and every election by helping to close the race and age gap. Created by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizations to register new voters across the country and advance civic education for the entire family and voters of every age to build an informed and engaged electorate for today and generations to come. When We All Vote empowers their supporters and volunteers to take action through voting, advocating for their rights, and holding their elected officials accountable. Please visit whenweallvote.org to stand up for your rights, voting rights. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The Chase Ink Business Premier Card is made for people who make things happen, like me. I'm Sam, founder and CEO of Manifest, a product design company that makes everyday products designed smarter. I get 2.5% cash back on purchases of $5,000 or more, plus unlimited 2% cash back on all other purchases, which helps us make more smart ideas into a brilliant reality.
The Ink Business Premier Card. Learn more at chase.com/business premier. Chase for business. Make more of what's yours. Real business owner compensated for their participation. Account subject to credit approval. Restrictions and limitations apply. Cards are issued by JP Morgan Chase Bank. Any member FDIC.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Faz Shakir, who is the executive director and founder of More Perfect Union, a nonprofit. We've been talking politics all this hour, and in case you've just tuned in, we've gone through the Middle East. We've gone through Jim Jordan and his attempt to become Speaker of the House. We talked about Bernie Sanders endorsing Joe Biden and AOC for that matter, and what is the progressive strategy with Biden as the 2024 nominee. We could spend hours talking just about that question. What is the progressive strategy when it comes to Biden in 2024? And now I want to talk I've got, 3 minutes left here. I want to talk just briefly here about Biden and his allies. There was a huge piece in the New York Times some days ago. You probably saw it fast about the efforts by Biden and his team to crush and destroy these third-party candidates, get them out of the way because they're afraid that it might siphon off votes from them, and Donald Trump may get back in the White House. That is an existential threat. I understand that, and I get it. I just don't think you suspend democratic principles of allowing people to run and to be heard and letting the voters make their own decisions. I don't think you suspend that democratic principle because you're scared of one guy and the fact that votes might be siphoned away from you. In a word, I think that what the Biden people are doing is anti-democratic. It's anti-democratic. That's my assessment. Give me yours.
You're a smart guy, Tavis. I respect your opinion. I'm not. My view would be that I don't think that they're saying you can't run.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to make politics ain't beanbags.
Sure.
You want to step into the arena.
I get that.
Guess what? You're going to get some opposition. So if you want to run against us, you want to help, siphon votes away from Biden or siphon votes away from Trump or whatever. Expect some pushback. And my point was, go ahead and run. We want people to run, but I do think it's incumbent on those of us who want to stop Trump to have an argument back to them. It's not just say, hey, go run without a counter argument. And to his credit, he's not there's not bad mouthing Cornell. He's a very decent and good human being. That's not going on. It's just saying, hey, if you want to, here's the stakes as we see it. And then you may have a different point of view. Go ahead and make your argument, but it's incumbent upon us to say politics ain't beanbag. We're going to have an argument about this.
Yeah, and yet you were around fast, so they didn't play fair. They didn't play nice with Bernie. I get it; it ain't beanbags, but they tried to destroy Bernie Sanders, man. They tried to shut him out and shut him down.
In 2016, they did.
Yes,
that's exactly what happened in 2016. I would say that 2020 was better. I mean, it was a fair process. Voters had a choice, and they decided. But obviously, we saw a lot of endorsements from Obama and Buttigieg and others go against us in the last moment. But that said, voters decided. And so I think from 2020, we had a better playing field than it was in 2016 when, as you say, they used their party apparatus to stack the deck against Bernie Sanders in a real way.
Yeah, well,
and that was in the context of a Democratic primary, to be clear, right? We're talking about third-party candidates, but they were using the party apparatus to say, we're going to crutch somebody who's trying to run as a Democrat.
That's even worse. That's even worse.
Absolutely, right. You want to live your values within the party, right? You're in the family, you're in the tent. The beanbag is supposed to be for your opponents.
Exactly. I got an op-ed piece coming out. When it comes out, I'm sure I'll be catching some hell about that, and so I'll defend myself then when it comes out. I got 30 seconds here, very tight 30 seconds. Tell me what a More Perfect Union does right quick.
Oh, well, you got to tell stories from the working class. Tavis, one of the biggest issues in America is income inequality. And what my view is, we don't have enough media journalism that tells the stories of workers' lives, whether you're a worker who's working a gig work and getting screwed on your wage and you don't even know how much a ride costs. You don't look at all these people who drive Uber. You don't even know how much you're actually getting paid for a ride. It's crazy. And they want to call them a small business. You got people on the picket lines at UAW. What we're trying to do is just tell the stories, not from the perspective of corporate elite, who we hear every day on mainstream media. Tell from the workers' lives. So if you go on there, you'll just hear the stories about the economy from real people who actually do the work.
It's called More Perfect Union. You can find it online. His name is Faz Shakir. Faz, love you, appreciate you. Talk to you soon, my friend. All the best to you.
Thank you, Tavis.
Thank you for your time. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump is back in a New York Attorney General Letitia James calling her a radical